All right. Welcome back to HPP, the podcast that talks with tomorrow's hoop stars, even though we don't have any guests on this show because this is the second episode of the week. I am Rich Harrison. Thank you for joining us again. And today I am joined by the same people who joined us for the other show that we had this week, mostly focusing on the college and draft. And I am joined by Cam Reel and Joey Bardak. And gentlemen, we're gonna just jump right into it, into our NBA notebook, and I want to ask you some questions now that we've moved to the conference finals. And if I can get my computer to cooperate, I'll ask you. All right. So, question number one, Joey. What's wrong with the Cavaliers? And mind you, they have picks 49 and 58, which is likely to help them push them, over the top, those picks. And when I say what's wrong with them, they were the top seed in the East, and they're out of the playoffs. Was that just injuries, or does this team need some fix?
It's funny. I like that as the first question. My roommate is a Cavs fan, so this is a conversation I've had time and again. And what I warned him throughout the season, when he was talking all this smack about the Cavs being number one, was I said something I think they lack very much of is playoff experience. I think playoff experience is so vital, and they're such a young team, and they just don't have that yet. And that's why I had the Pacers winning that series, and that's why I think they did. However, the only way to get experience is to get experience, which is what they've gone and done now. And, I think some people are kind of hitting the panic button, sounding the alarm. We need to blow it up. Someone's got to go, all that. I wouldn't be worried yet. It's a very young core. Mobley's still 23. Garland's, I think, 25. A very young team.
I don't even know if Garland's 25.
No?
Yeah, maybe. Just doesn't seem like he's been around that long, and he's only played like 3 games in college.
Let me see how old he is, because now I'm curious. Yeah, 25.
Wow.
Yeah, Allen's 27, Mitchell's 28. So yeah, they're still young.
How about DeAndre Hunter? He's probably about 27, 28.
Yeah, I think somewhere around there. So yeah, it's still a very young team, and they got screwed with injuries last year. They got screwed with injuries this year in the playoffs. Ty Jerome had a colossally bad playoffs. I don't think you can depend on him playing that way in every playoff series. And also, they made a big trade mid-year. They brought in Hunter. They got rid of LeVert and Niang, who would become staples. And I think that that's a big change to adjust to in only half a season. I think I don't think they should do anything drastic. I think they should get a better backup big, because they have Allen and Mobley.
Dean Wade is more of a stretch forward.
Right. I think they need a little bit more big depth. And then I think they're, one more 3-and-D wing away. I don't know if Merrill or Okoro is like the answer. I think they're one more guy away. And
Merrill got hurt too. I mean, Merrill was hurt. Hunter was hurt.
Got hurt.
Drawing a blank.
Garland was hurt.
Mobley was hurt. And then Mitchell gets hurt.
Right. Yeah. Everyone was injured. They're still a young team. I think that this is just part of the process. You're not going to win the championship every year. I mean, most championship teams, they had their struggles years before. I think this is just part of the road. I think if you keep the core together, build more team chemistry, just keep going. I think this was valuable playoff experience for a lot of these guys. I'm hearing a lot of, panic alarms, a lot of trade rumors, all that. I don't think they should do anything drastic. I think they should just take this experience, learn from it, build upon it, maybe bring in one more wing, maybe a backup big, and yeah.
Maybe bring Karis LeVert back.
Yeah. I don't know what they were thinking with the Hunter trade. I just don't. I
Well, I
don't
think
know.
Hunter's a nice piece, but I don't want to
Really,
lose. I don't want to lose Levert.
I
I don't
think
even know if he's a good piece.
I think I think the real struggle with the Cavs is, I mean, we see this with the Pacers and the Thunder. They trot out 10 guys that can lock you up. And the Cavs, I mean, when you have a backcourt of Garland and Mitchell, that's they're not good
Or
defenders.
Merrill and
Ty Jerome.
Ty Jerome coming off the bench. They're not good defenders either.
Yeah,
They never have been. In college,
right.
they were, well, Jerome was a great passer and an efficient scorer. Merrill was a knockdown three-point shooter. You know what? That's what these guys still are.
Oh yeah, like if you just throw like a Davion Mitchell on this Cavs team or someone like that, I think that drastically improves their chances because, I mean, when you're playing against really good shot creators in Nemhard, McConnell's good off the bounce, like playing against those guys, Garland and Mitchell, they just defend. You can't take them out the court because, I mean, they're your team, they're your offense, but you need to have guys you can kind of shuffle in there to shoulder the defensive burden, unless they're gonna drastically improve defensively, which I don't really see happening.
You know what? Think about that team though. Garland, offensive player. Dean Wade, offensive player. Jerome, offensive player.
Oh no! Don't respect Dean Wade like that. Dean Wade's a good defender.
I love Dean Wade, but he's never been a good defender.
No, he
and
is
then
a good defender.
Merrill, offensive player. Strus, offensive player.
Right.
Mitchell, offensive player. Who are the defenders on that team? You have Mobley, you have Allen, and you have
Okoro. That's it.
Okoro can defend, and Hunter.
Hunter's a good defender.
So, Cam, I'm going to turn this over to you. But one thing I want to say is, even when they had everybody on the floor beside Merrill for the last couple of games, obviously the first few games it was all Davion Mitchell, but they never seemed to leave that except for maybe in some spurts, like the first half of the last game. They were beating Indiana up in the post, and in the second half they went away from that. It just seems like it's too Mitchell centric to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of that was Mobley being hampered with his injury, and I think too, like, this Cavs team is just completely different if Garland's not right. Like when Garland is playing to his full capability, they play really fast, and also they have the ability to rest Mitchell because Garland can run. He's a true primary ball handler, and so is Mitchell. I think they, when Garland is not right, they're completely dependent on Mitchell, which is what you saw in that series where he was putting up 45 and it just didn't matter.
Right.
I think I like that aspect of their team where they can still keep the foot on the gas pedal when both those guys are healthy. I think where they really need to make a decision is, are they fully committed to the too big lineup? I think in some ways it's what makes them unique. They're a little bit bigger at all times, but at the same time, neither of those guys is especially like imposing huge. You don't have like a Steven Adams out there. Like Allen's a big guy, but he's not completely like a deterrent at the rim, I would say. I just think like they kind of have two paths. Do you fully commit to Mobley? I think if that's what you want to do, he needs to play center. I think that's when his ability to handle the ball a little bit, now kind of starting to move his game out to the 3-point line, that's where he becomes valuable. I think if you want to continue to play him at power forward, you just kind of have this Jaren Jackson issue where you have a guy that skill-wise is best suited for the 5, but you don't get all of those benefits because he has to play with, another guy that's taking up the rim space. That to me, a lot
of those guys,
they have to look into moving.
Mobley, Jackson, guys. Anthony Davis, they all don't want to play the 5.
Yeah, and the thing is, they're all capable of doing it. They just don't. I think Jaren Jackson, you could argue, is really a 4. I think Anthony Davis is a 5. He just is.
Yeah.
He just
And it
doesn't want to
annoys the
take the
hell out of me
rebounding
when
load.
when he keeps on saying, I don't want to play the five. I don't want to play the five. What happened to positionless NBA basketball? Shut
It's
up
like
and you
it's
don't need
like
another
Kevin
big next
Durant
to you.
saying he's not 7 feet tall. We all know he's 7 feet tall. We know he can do it, but he just doesn't want the label of it.
Mhm.
That to me is the difference maker there. Um, yeah, to me the biggest issue was the Hunter trade. I think to me, DeAndre Hunter has always been kind of a paper tiger in the NBA. His frame, his wingspan, his 3-point shooting percentage. But at the end of the day, it's like he hasn't been a part of successful basketball. Like his entire career with the Hawks, they've been good when he's not on the court. He's
And
not
that's been a
actually all
lot
that great of
because
a defender.
he's been injury prone ever since he got into the league.
Yeah, on top of that too. And like you even think back to when he was in college, he was best at the four. That was his real position of strength. So I don't know. I think they gave up a little bit too much to get him. They gave up another one of their ball handlers, in Karis LeVert. That gave them a lot of options off the bench. I think it was kind of like it was a little bit of a greedy trade to me. It's like we have this great lineup, we're on a run, let's take advantage of it. But they ended up kind of shooting themselves in the foot, in my opinion.
Okay. Um, Joey, did I hear you right that you thought that uh Miami's, did you mention Davion Mitchell joining this team?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah. He's one of my favorite players. I love defensive guards like that, they're undersized, but they just make such an impact. I mean, obviously Miami wasn't that great of a team, but you saw in those playoff games or in the play-in games and those playoff games, like he was working his butt off, and you just know if you put him on a contender and you bring him in off the bench, he's going to give you everything and he's going to make a real impact.
Right, right. All right. So we'll move on to our second topic, with Jayson Tatum likely to miss most, if not all, of next season. Where do the Celtics go from here? They have picks 28 and 32 in the draft, so you might find some useful players at that spot, though I don't know if those players are going to be impactful year one. So you're looking at a year without Tatum. And Jaylen Brown has a partially torn meniscus as well, though he should probably be ready for next season. What do you do with it? What do the Celtics do? Just kind of ride it out and they'll probably still make the playoffs if they kept this core around. But again, to me, the bench with this team just needs to improve, and we're going to get to that with other teams. It's just these teams, none of them have a decent bench. Um, so, and I think it's, and, so, and as I read through the NBA, rumors and stuff like that, I think they can't, like the Heat can't afford Davion Mitchell. I'm like, you can't afford not to have him, you know. What are
Yeah.
you going to do without him? So yeah, Cam, what are the Celtics going to do here?
Well, the first thing you're going to see is they're going to make a trade to get under the second apron. Who that's going to be. I think you have to look at some combination of Drew Holiday, Porzingis, or Horford. I think
Horford's a free
Tatum.
agent, and
Oh, he
now
is.
he's saying
Yeah,
he might retire.
yeah. I mean, in that case, that's going to help their book a little bit, but they're still going to have to make another trade to get under that second apron because, like you said, they need to improve the bench at least a little bit. And that's virtually impossible to do when you're above that second apron on the salary cap in, our current NBA. So, I think realistically, the guy that they'll have to move on from is Drew Holiday. I think with the extension that they signed him to, um, it's going to be really hard to keep him on the roster. And I think too, he kind of overlaps with Derek White in a lot of ways in the way that they play. So I think that's going to be one of the first things that you see, be a little bit of a miniature tank for them, but they'll still probably be a playoff team.
2 points I want to throw at you. What is it with, you and I sit here and we talk about it on the show, and, we say it every year, free agency time. Why did you spend so much money on that 32-year-old guy? Why did you spend so much money on that 34-year-old guy? They're going to break down sooner than later. And teams
Yep.
keep on doing it. And then when they talk about trade, oh, we want this guy. We want this guy. I'm like, he's 36 years old.
Mhm.
You're going to.
I think with
What is
that
the
one,
fascination with these old guys? And the other question I have is, and this goes along with it, is it time that the NBA looks at this tax structure and maybe we go a little bit more to the good old days where the Lakers bench could beat the Nets bench or Nets starters? I mean, we don't have any. The playoffs this year is almost like a
I mean,
crapshoot because all these teams go about 7 or 8
yeah,
deep. Go 7 or 8 deep. Indiana and Oklahoma City are the exceptions where they maybe go 8. Maybe Indiana goes 8 or
part of
9,
my
and Oklahoma
problem,
City maybe goes 9 or 10. But
yeah,
what I'm saying is, in the old days, the Celtics and the Lakers, they had what they would do is they would have the 35-year-old former 10-time All-Star or former NBA MVP like Bob McAdoo or Bill Walton coming off the bench.
yep. Well, and I think too, those guys ultimately had some affordable contracts. Not so much McAdoo, but anyway, I think part of my issue with the way that the salaries work in the NBA with the new structure is that the entire way that free agency has worked for teams that are trying to keep their players for really the past 10 years is pay them as much as possible and really do it for as long as you can, right? 4 or 5 year contracts. But the thing is, the whole structure of the league was built on that, and then they brought in this new CBA, and it actually punishes teams that have multiple max players, right? Like the Celtics, right? Because now this second apron, it completely removes their ability to build a bench through free agency. So you lose your mid-level exception, which is, your Bill Walton role. You have to pay the repeater tax on top of that. So you already have an expensive roster, but you're also getting punished on top of that expensive roster. So realistically, the actual full value of a guy like Drew Holiday, they're paying an extra 10, 15, 20 million just because they have his contract on a second apron team. So in the long term too, it also limits your ability to change the team. So if you do get locked into a guy like Holiday and he does become injury prone, then it makes it almost impossible to get rid of him, especially during the season, because you can only trade contract 1-to-1 salary.
Right.
Right. You don't have any ability to reduce salary. You can't actually take on even a little bit more money. To me, it's what they're trying to create with this CBA is parity and more change, when realistically, I would probably rather watch an NBA that has, really no hard cap, really no salary cap. I think, I would prefer an NBA that's more like baseball, where a guy actually gets paid his market value. And sure, there'll be a little bit of chaos.
Yeah, that's the problem I have. It seems like the current structure, you don't get paid by how productive you are or even your potential. If you're old and you've been in the league for a long time, you're going to get a lot of money, even though you may fade in a year.
Look at Paul George.
Right.
Paul George is the perfect example.
Right.
He just got a new contract and he barely played on it this year.
Right. And he's barely played for the last few years.
Yeah.
What the hell?
But that's my thing with, if we got rid of the salary cap, you could make that deal. If you're the Sixers, you could sign Paul George. And if he becomes injury prone or he sucks, that's a problem. But you're the 76ers, you can afford it. Go buy somebody else. I think And to me too, like what else would help more with continuity, which fans can complain about all the time, than, oh, I don't have to worry about my team sucking because we paid Giannis all this money. I'm going to worry about my team sucking because we're not willing to pay his supporting cast, right? You're the team that drafted this guy. You get to keep him, pay him as much as you can. If he wants to go somewhere else, he can. That's an option. But at the same time, your team is set up because you've drafted this great player. And now you just have to build around him. We're going to give you all the tools to do
you
it.
almost get you get punished for excellence, and there are no dominating teams anymore. And even if they do dominate for a year or two, they won't be that way for much longer because
Yeah.
those guys are going to get paid.
I'll tell you, even if the Celtics won the championship this year and were healthy all the way through, they still would have traded somebody like Drew Holiday away
Yeah,
because they can't afford to pay that tax.
right.
The team
Right.
would be hampered
And
forever,
that's what I'm
basically.
thinking. Maybe that tax has to loosen up, and also maybe buyouts may have to become more friendly,
Yeah.
more friendly to both.
Yeah,
I mean,
like a longer stretch or something like
yeah,
that.
or even you get a discount or something. You know that if
Yeah.
you give up on a player gets his money, but it doesn't hurt you so much if you get rid
Yep.
of him.
Yep.
But Joey, getting back to the Celtics, are you in line with what we're thinking, dude? Do you have different thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, you guys pretty much covered it. I don't know, I learned a lot just about the salary concept just from listening to you two. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, the Celtics, their core, like, even without Tatum, I still think they're one of the better teams in the NBA. I think they could still finish top 5 in the East without him. Just, I mean, a starting 5 of Holiday, Brown. I mean, assuming they can keep the other 4 of Holiday, Brown.
I think Porzingis or Holiday are gone, and Horford is going to probably have to sign a very friendly deal if he wants to stay in Boston.
Right, and Pritchard, I'm sure, is
Mhm.
going to take a bigger deal somewhere else as well.
Yeah, that's definitely a risk too. Yeah.
And that's
Right.
that's going to be a problem. I mean, Shireman and Baylor, big friend of the show, and Sam Hauser. You know,
Mhm.
they're nice pieces, and I don't know if we know exactly what the ceiling is for Baylor. But I just don't know if he can be an NBA point guard. He's played point guard in the past, and it would be great if he can at his size, 6'7", 6'8". But is he Peyton Pritchard's replacement?
Yeah, yeah. There's
Here's the thing. If I'm the Celtics, I don't sign Horford. I say, Al, thanks for your service. And I get rid of Porzingis or Holiday. You probably can. I think Holiday is definitely more reliable at this point. But Porzingis, I believe, is a little younger. But yeah, I guess I would get rid of one of those guys. I would develop my young guys. I would develop picks 28, picks 32, and hope that you get a decent pick next year. Maybe pick 15, maybe even you get in the lottery. I would not work next year to get into do well unless Tatum's going to come back by maybe the All-Star break.
Right. I mean, that's the other thing is, do you maybe go out and sign, someone like a Tobias Harris, just, like a veteran wing, just to kind of like steady the ship almost?
No, I don't. I don't. And the reason I don't do that is because I want to get a decent draft pick.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
Tobias Harris without Tatum is just going to put you like the 7th seed in the playoffs, or the 6th seed in the playoffs. And yeah, you're going
but
nowhere.
It's definitely a tough spot for them. I mean, it's almost certain that they're going to go into the season either without a starting point guard or without a starting center. Because, I mean, between Porzingis, Horford, Holiday, and Pritchard, it's likely 3 of the 4 of them will be gone. And, I mean, you still have Brown, you still have White. Let's say they keep Porzingis and move on from Holiday. It's a solid core 3. But then, I mean, you're left with literally nothing else. Maybe you plug Hauser into the starting lineup.
Or
Maybe
Shireman.
right.
I mean, Shireman can play anywhere from point guard to small forward,
Yeah, and maybe you draft a point guard, maybe you draft Pettiford or someone, in the draft, plug them in 6-man or whatever you're going to do, and, pray the team does well, and then,
They also could
playoffs.
lose Cornette. who had his moments in the playoffs.
Oh yeah, I think Cornette's going to get a big deal somewhere too.
I don't know about big deal, but
Not big deal, but I I think he will get a like. I mean, with the Celtics, he's been kind of sporadic. I think he's going to get a solid rotation spot in the league now.
like Hartenstein eventually.
Yeah,
Did?
right. I could see. I think there. I could see the Warriors, the Nuggets. A lot of teams that could use a solid big going after someone like Cornette.
The next Kelly Olynyk.
I love Kelly Olynyk.
I do too.
All
Yeah,
right.
tough spot with the Celtics for sure. I mean, you're going into the season like you can't even really try because you're not going to win a championship without Tatum. So
Right.
it's a tough spot for sure.
Picks 28 and 32 though are nice to have.
Yeah.
In this
I
spot.
mean,
That's good.
Yeah, and great front office. It is reasonable to assume they hit on both those picks, knowing them.
Yeah.
But it won't be instantaneous at all.
Derek White went around pick 30.
Yeah.
Not for them, but San Antonio.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on to your Nuggets. And my question I wrote down here is, do the Nuggets need a bench or what? And what are their options since they have no draft picks this year? That team has not been run well over the last 3 years. Since the championship, everything they've done, their drafting, everything, their signings, nothing except for maybe Russell Westbrook. That worked out pretty nicely. But other than that, you're like, what the is this team doing?
The Zignagi signing still irks me.
4 years, 30.
Why is he making $10 million a year anyway?
He doesn't even play.
He hasn't played ever.
Yeah.
I've
He
got
didn't even
a
play that
mock
much in
draft.
Arizona.
I got a little mock trade for you guys. Run it by you, Joey. I'm curious what you think of this one.
Yeah, I
Right.
better include Michael Porter Jr.
It doesn't.
Oh, really?
No, it does not.
All right, let's hear it.
So I was thinking of ways that you could build a bench around this current roster, take advantage of some of the money that you want to get rid of immediately, but also, you got to sacrifice some stuff in this league. So here's the trade. Okay, Nuggets trade Zignagi's contract, again, absurd, and Julian Strother, who's on a team option, along with their sole first-round pick that they still have in the coffers for the rights to Lonzo Ball.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
I think
don't
that
think
first round pick's worth more.
You
that
got to pay. You got to pay the piper.
But I don't know if you go after another point guard when you already have Murray and Westbrook. I feel like more so.
Ball is 6'6". He can play the 2. He can play the 3, which actually the Bulls play him at the 3 quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd rather go for more of like a traditional 3-and-D wing than a guard. I'm thinking like. I don't know. I feel like what I'm thinking more so is, I think the reason we've kept Porter Jr. for so long is he's pretty inefficient, and he's not a good defender, but he can score, he can shoot. And
when he's healthy, he's one of the. I mean, for me, I love watching him shoot. It's so pretty.
He's a hell of a shooter.
Yep. Absolutely. And we've needed that offense in the past because KCP was putting up 10 a game. Gordon wasn't the player he was, but. Nowadays, Christian Brown's averaging 16.5 a game. Gordon's developing offensively. Westbrook is scoring. I feel like we don't need Porter's offense as much anymore. I feel like it might be better trade him for like another 3-and-D guy. Get like a Nesmith or a Dylan Brooks or a Lou Dort. Or
you don't want
like
Dylan
that.
Brooks.
But my point is,
for yourself, Rich. I love Dylan Brooks.
I think
I love Dylan.
I think Dylan Brooks is out of Houston.
Let me tell you,
that team needs shooting, and he's not the answer.
No.
I'll tell you what, though,
he'll shoot.
Oh yeah,
he'll shoot.
But my point is, if you trade Porter, you get like a 3-and-D. You get 2 3-and-D wings. You need one to start, and then one.
Okay, in concept, yes. I've been trying, but the problem is, who wants? I like Michael Porter as a player. Who else wants him at $38 million a year.
That's the issue.
Houston, they need shooting.
They don't want him at 38.
Just dump him to Portland. We'll
That's the problem, though. It's like we don't have picks to give. We have
You
one,
could bring in Aiton.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. A
Take the money
backup big
tomorrow.
that's softer. Yeah,
Softer than a pillow.
I don't know. I think realistically, I just don't think Porter's tradable. Like
Yeah,
beyond not even just the contract, but the medical. I mean, his back has literally been fucked up since he was in high school.
Right.
You know,
And this playoff did not help his case. I mean, it's you don't really want to hold him to his performance as much because he was clearly playing through an injury, but it just goes to show how injury prone he is.
Yeah, I think this one was a little fluky.
Yeah, no, for sure.
First off, it was fluky because he got hurt diving for a ball.
Mm-hmm.
Which he doesn't do.
Which is hard to believe in the first place.
But
Michael
also,
Porter dove onto the court.
Yeah, he got crushed by Lou Dort, dude. Anyway, no, I think the tough thing is that was his best game that he's had in the playoffs in his career, and then he got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I believe he fits, and I think he fits well with this team. I think he fits better with the Nuggets than just about any other roster in the league.
Right.
You know, because he goes and plays somewhere else. He's a guy that can shoot, but can't really dribble. For us, for the Nuggets, he provides spacing when Jamal Murray's having an off night. He moves off the ball pretty well as well. And I think too, like an underrated part of his game is his offensive rebounding. Can be a really good source of offensive rebounding for the Nuggets at times. I just think ultimately, like, no other team wants to invest in him at that dollar amount for what he produces. I just think he's not a good enough ball handler. I think he hasn't shown the ability to be a primary scorer, and that's what you are paying $38 million a year for in the league. I just think it's going to be hard to move off of that contract. I think the better option is let's see if we can have one additional wing that can pick up, increase the speed a little bit, maybe bring a little bit more defense. And also too, like bring another primary ball handler. Because, Murray, he always has played at a slow pace. He's actually, by speed, one of the slowest starting point guards in the league.
Mm-hmm.
He likes to slow it down. He likes to back his guy down up the court. I think that's tiring to play that way. In some ways, it's actually
that really caught up to him toward the end of the OK series.
Yeah. You can only have Caruso fouling you for so long before you start to tire out.
Oh yeah, that happened in the Minnesota series last year as well.
Yep, same thing. Yeah, with Jaden McDaniels. So I think realistically, you need like Gordon is right now the second ball handler for the Nuggets, and that's like he's pretty decent at it. I think we could have had a different outcome Game 7 if he was healthy, able to move. But if Aaron Gordon's your second ball handler, that's a big problem. If Russell Westbrook is your third ball handler, that's also a problem. So I think, getting another guard, even somebody like Bruce Brown, if they could get him back at a cheaper rate,
Bruce Brown back, that would be huge.
But that's the one piece that they're really missing. And I agree, a defensive wing would be nice, but I don't think, those guys are really hard to come by. They just are.
Go ahead, Joey. I got a question to ask you guys after Joey.
Yeah. I was just going to say, like, the 2 points is, everyone's harping on the bench, and for good reason. But, I mean, Game 4 and Game 5, we had in the bag, and we just choked. Like, even with that bench, like, we still really, not easily, like, we still could have won this series and, gone who knows how far, even with this bench. So I just wanted to say that. And then also, I think that a lot of it is, there was the whole disconnect between Malone and Booth when, Malone wanted the veterans and Booth wanted to build up the younger core. And I think in doing so, it's raised some complex feelings because it hasn't entirely failed. I mean, Christian Brown's panned out about as well as you could imagine. Peyton Watson, I think, is blossoming, and I think he's still getting better. And I think with that, you just kind of and I'm asking you this also as a fan, like, do you kind of hold out hope that, maybe Peyton Watson will up his three, and maybe De'Ron Holmes will pan out, and maybe Strother will learn to be a little more efficient, and maybe, Pickett gets in the mix? Like, do you kind of hold out hope that this young bench just develops and then suddenly clicks?
Yes and no. I think part of the problem now at this point is you've pretty much devolved to the point of you have three players that are true playoff caliber contributors, in my opinion. Like Gordon, Jokic, Murray. And two of those three aren't exactly consistent either. Gordon had a great playoff run. This is the best he's ever played. But Murray's still up and down. I think even with Brown, I heard somebody making this case earlier too. Like, if you had shelled out the money to get KCP, and still started Brown, would you be better off as a team having KCP coming off the bench? Absolutely. But that's not what the front office wanted to do under Calvin Booth. Under Calvin Booth, they wanted us to play Jalen Pickett 20 minutes a game. They wanted the Nuggets to play Zeke Naji, clearly, 30 minutes a game. And that's really where that disconnect came from. It's like, I don't have, like, clearly, and clearly Malone didn't have a problem playing the young guys. He wanted to play the young guys that had earned it. That was where the disconnect was. So I think, I have some faith in, like, some of the guys that they've drafted. I don't see Najee panning out. I don't see Pickett panning out.
I
think
thought
Peyton Watson
there was a
could be
hugely
contributor.
questionable draft pick at the time.
Yeah, we were shocked by that one.
Yeah,
I remember
yeah,
that. It was
yeah.
like you could have gotten him
Absolutely
at
so.
50.
Yeah.
If
We
he
had
didn't even-
him, I think, on my board that year. I think I had him in the 60s.
Yeah, it wasn't. I didn't even think it was a guarantee he would get drafted at all. And what he ended up going? What did he end up
30.
being their
The third,
first round pick?
31.
Yeah.
31, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, that's crazy. I still like Hunter Tyson. I still want to see more of him. I think he's got size. He can shoot a little bit. He can
Got a
handle
nice
it a little
stroke.
bit.
He's got a nice
Really
stroke.
nice stroke. He's somebody that I think needs to play more. Peyton Watson, his defense is excellent, but you put the ball in his hands and he's just lost.
He has no touch.
Yeah, it's hard to watch. I was shocked that Strother didn't get more run in Game 7 after he kind of broke out and had a really great shooting display. I want to see him play more. I think you could play him with Murray quite a bit, actually. I think, too, part of the problem is, like, the Nuggets have been so, and I think this got worse under Adelman, but they're so committed to having the starting five and only the starting five on the court. And they, like,
you've seen that
like
over and over, though, in the playoffs. These teams just going with 6 and 7 guys every night.
But it's like, yeah, obviously your bench sucks because all your starters are off the court. Like your bench isn't going to be able to carry weight when your best 4 players are not involved in it.
Yeah, you got to mix it. You got to mix it up a little.
Yeah, and like even the Nuggets, the way Adelman would do it would be he would take Jokic off
and put Gordon in center.
Yeah, he had more Murray, Gordon, some combination of MPJ and Westbrook, and then whatever 5th player. A lot of times it was DeAndre Jordan, just for the size. But I think, like, when Strother was on the court, part of why they were playing so well was because they had Jokic and Murray still running their pick and roll, doing their high post-ups. And then the last guy on the totem pole was Strother, and he was just wide open in the corner. It's like, you're not putting your bench players in a position to succeed if you just throw them out there all together and say, go, don't lose by 10 this 5 minutes. I I don't know. I think they have done a good job of drafting for the most part with those picks. I think they gave up on a lot of upside with the guys that they selected because they had hit on Brown as a little bit more NBA ready young player. They decided to just stick with that theme and draft all old college players. When they could have taken a shot at a guy like Gigi Jackson, at 31 when they picked Jalen Pickett.
Right.
I think that was the miss there.
Can I ask you guys, how is it that they only have one first-round draft pick for the foreseeable future?
Booth. So what he did over the past couple seasons, part of how we ended up with the picks for Pickett, Tyson, the most recent trade up to get, oh gosh, I'm blanking on his name now, from Dayton.
Oh, Deron
Holmes.
Yeah.
Deron Holmes.
The trade up to get Deron Holmes was all by basically pawning off future picks to get a current pick. So actually, like OKC has a couple of those, I think.
Nice.
Of course,
Yeah. So
all right, let's move on to the Warriors. And the question here is Golden State a decent center away from being a title contender? And what I mean by that is not someone who necessarily would start or play starters minutes, but somebody who could protect the rim, and give them some rim protection. I mean, and this is assuming they keep Kuminga and he plays with more consistency. They only have one pick this year in the draft, and that's number 41. So I'll let you start, Joey. What do you think?
I'm conflicted. I think that there are a lot of teams that finish top in the playoffs, or that finish, top in the regular season, but I don't view as true contenders. And then there are teams that finish towards the bottom of the playoffs, but I still view as contenders. And it feels weird, thinking that, like, I think a perfect example of that was like the Rockets were a 2 and the Warriors were the 7, and the Warriors were favored, but for good reason. I think it's plausible. I mean, it depends on the rotations Kerr puts out, because I mean, it really is a team divided, right? You have your vets in Steph and Jimmy and Draymond, and then you have your young guys, in Podziemski and Kuminga and Moody. It almost feels like two teams in one, and it hasn't always gelled, but in watching the playoffs, it's clear the talent is there, and and if you get it, like, just not even anyone elite, just get like a Daniel Gafford, just a solid rim protecting lob threat center, just someone like that. And it's plausible. It depends. Like you said, is Kuminga going to be efficient? Is Kerr going to play Kuminga? Is everyone going to stay healthy? Is Draymond going to not get himself kicked out of every single game? Is Buddy Hield going to be able to knock down threes? It's a lot of ifs. It's
Right.
a lot of ifs for sure. But I think if they can just get to another 6-7 seed and they stay healthy and, they run a start. I mean, you trot out a starting lineup of Steph, Hield, Butler, Green, and Gafford, and then you can get Podziemski, Moody, and Kuminga big minutes off the bench. I mean, that's a good lineup.
And Trace Jackson Davis, I think he could be an important role player too.
Right, or post. I mean, I think they have potential off the bench. Like, I don't think they're completely useless, but it's clear they're not the guy. It's clear they're not the guy Kerr is looking for. So if they can get a Gafford, I don't know why he's just always my like quintessential average big, shot blocker.
But can be game changing at the same time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look, the Mavs made the finals last year just by getting bigs, like just by getting Lively and, Gafford. Like, yeah, that's all you need sometimes. And I don't,
And Gafford's always had trouble playing big minutes. So this is kind of like the perfect team for him because they don't like to always have a 7-footer on the floor.
Right.
And right.
There's versatility. They can move Green to the center and put in Kuminga and Butler at small forward and power forward, or they can put in TJD, or they can put in post. Like, so there are a lot of options for that team. It just kind of depends on. It's a lot of ifs. I mean, Pajemski, Hield, Kuminga, they're not efficient players. They looked good this playoffs, and Steph was hurt, so none of it really mattered. It was all for naught. But had Steph been healthy, and had they been able to keep up that efficiency,
may have had a different outcome. Cam, what are your thoughts on Golden State?
I was looking around to see if I had a shovel as a prop, but yeah, I'm out. I'm ready to bury the dynasty.
You could have just taken a fork and just poked it into something.
It's a lot of work.
So you think they're done?
Yeah, no, I'm out.
Okay.
I think this was actually a pretty great example of what I think the Warriors are going forward. Like this playoff run, it's like, man, they can go nuclear for a series, and then Steph's a little nicked up. Draymond's not quite as athletic as he used to be. Jimmy's carrying too much of the weight, or he gets hurt. I just think this is kind of the outcome that we're going to see from here on. I think that's why the 23 championship was like so cool, was because it was like this was what the future looked like for this team, and they got one more chip in kind of before declines.
It's just the problem with these teams with older guys who play huge minutes. They're going to break down. I mean, you can almost count on it.
Yeah. I do think that they are one like true starting caliber guy away from being actual contenders again.
Mm-hmm.
I think kind of an underrated aspect of their team, the way that they've been run for the past few years, they still have a lot of their own picks. So, I don't know how crazy, say the Giannis sweepstakes are going to get, or, maybe Jaylen Brown is somehow available. I don't know. But I think they could kind of sneak in as like a backdoor contender for a big star free agent or trade, sign and trade. So
my last question in the notebook is, how fishy, when I mean fishy, I mean questionable, dubious, is it that Dallas ended up with the number 1 pick? Because I thought when Luka Doncic was traded, I thought no one, when you see multiple picks going out for Chris Paul and Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, how can Dallas only come away with one number 1 pick and a 30-some-year-old player who's on the downside of his career, who always complains about playing at his natural position? How could this be, other than, boy, Boston seems to be going to be good for the next 5 years. That was before the Tyson injury. But their rival on the other coast, oh, what's happening to them? They're losing LeBron. How can we fix this, says the commissioner. Let's send Luka to the Lakers. I just had this vision in my mind. Now, does that happen? Probably not, but it just seemed fishy. And now Dallas's reward for working with the commissioner in my paranoid scenario, their reward is getting the number 1 pick when they had less than a 2% chance to get the number 1 pick. I was just, when that happened, I was like, what the? Because it just seems so, like, if you were writing a movie about an insider scheme, this would be it.
It's definitely the coldest envelope. Absolutely, the frozen envelope it's here. I don't know about it so much being like, there's a huge conspiracy of let's get Luka to Laker, yeah. But I think like here's your real take. Oh wow, the Mavs GM just really fucked this up. We have fans burning jerseys, burying the franchise in the parking lot. Dallas Mavericks fans in Dallas buying Luka Laker jerseys and wearing them to the games. Um, let's throw this franchise a bone. Save the franchise, save the value of that team. Let's throw them the number one pick. I think kind of the same way that the Pelicans keep ending up with number one picks. And the Cavs for that matter on that note. I think.
I mean, I honestly think that this needs to be looked into.
I mean, I personally, I could care. To me, I think the problem with the NBA lottery is that we have this like fake assumption that it's odds based, and it's just not. Like, it seems like every year when something crazy might happen for this crazy player, this incredible top prospect, whatever, the crazy happens. I mean, you can go back to Memphis had the highest odds to get LeBron, and he ends up in Ohio. How'd that happen? Patrick Ewing, of course, the famous frozen envelope, the original draft lottery. The Cavs winning multiple for number one picks in a row. Go down the list, New Orleans Pelicans getting Anthony Davis when the NBA owned the team. There's a long list.
And Zion.
Yeah, there's a long list. To me, just get rid of the lottery.
Yes.
Or
yes.
to me,
yes.
To me, my favorite, just make it a flat lottery. Everybody gets the same odds as long as you're outside of the playoffs. Let chaos reign. Let the Hawks get the number one pick again. I don't care. Right?
I would think that would encourage more.
Chaos.
I would think that would encourage more tanking, and I don't want more tanking.
See, I think it would do the opposite.
I agree.
I have no incentive to tank. I have no incentive to be bad.
Why wouldn't you if you don't make the playoffs?
Because my odds at getting the number one pick, no matter what, are 1 in 20.
Yeah, if your odds of making the playoffs are that low, you may as well just try and win.
Yeah.
No, I totally get it. Yeah,
I think you would have the sort of play-in tankers, but that's already happening anyway. That's how Dallas ended up with Lively in the first place. Right? They should have been a playoff team. They decided, screw it, let's try and keep this pick.
Well, they also made a trade to get Lively. Lively was somebody else's pick who could have used them. I think New Orleans.
Well, no, it was their own pick because they had to tank out to keep it.
Are you sure? I thought they.
Yeah, it was lottery protected. So if they, well, not exactly. I think it was top 12 protected. It had some strange protection. But the reason that they had tanked out of the playoffs previously in that year was for the chance to keep that pick. And they ended up keeping it and selecting Lively.
Right.
But if they'd made the playoffs, they would have given up the pick. And to me, it's like, okay, cool. You don't want to be in the playoffs? That's on you. Your team's clearly not good enough. And anyway, you're probably you're fighting to be the 8th seed. You're not going to win anyway. I don't care. Go get your draft pick.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, I think it's more fun.
I definitely would. I actually think it's time to do away with the lottery. I don't think it's doing what it set out to do. I think there's more tanking than ever, and then we have a situation like this, which makes you, wonder how did that happen? Apparently, there was a. First of all, how many envelopes have to be in there for you to have a 1.5 chance? It has to be at least 300.
So they do so that it's basically a Powerball is how they select. So they pull 4 balls.
Nobody should be pulling anything. It should be machine oriented. Don't get your hands out of there. I'll slap it.
Well, it is. It is. It's literally basically a Powerball machine.
Well, I want to watch it. I want to watch it because I don't believe Dallas.
I agree with.
Dallas got the number one pick. I think it was given to them.
Yeah. Why would they move it from the public view to behind closed doors if not for a suspicious
It's
reason?
been behind closed doors for years.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, we used to
Years.
see it. We used to
It
see
didn't
it.
used
Used
to
to be
be.
Yeah.
envelopes. Used to
But
be
no,
envelopes.
I think even the envelope ones, they did a predetermined pick. And then they did
Oh,
that for the cameras.
right.
What
Right.
about that? What about the like I'm thinking like the 90s ping pong balls with the magic? Even back, I mean, at least they showed something.
Even that one, they had already pre-selected it.
Ah,
That was just so I think the way that they do it for TV is the people in the room don't know,
Here's what I think. I
right?
think the worst 20 teams in the league should the first team, all right, first team sends up their representative and he shoots a dart at a dartboard. Now you got 20 numbers on a British dartboard. So
Got a
whatever
lot of
number you
shooters.
hit, that's your draft pick.
hear me out.
Basically
out.
what they're doing now.
All the bottom teams, you each send out one player. They do a 1v1 tournament to decide the draft order. There you go.
I'm telling
That's
you
actually a
though, I
setting
don't
that you
believe in
can do
this.
in 2K.
I don't believe in this system anymore. Do you, Joey?
No, I mean, look, I'm not big into conspiracy theories, but I believe with 100% certainty that Adam Silver said, "Hey, Mavs, send Luka to the Lakers, and we'll give you a first round, and we'll give you first overall pick." I fully believe it. And Rich, we said that in our episode with Sammy. I remember we were talking about like the owner setting Nico up for that really awkward press conference. And I said in that moment, I'm like, Nico doesn't even feel like he believes it. I feel like he's got to be the fall guy. And I feel like this totally supports that because it's not like he has a say when the commissioner is telling you to trade Luka. I mean, what's Nico gonna do? Say no and get fired?
Right. Well, it
Um,
would have been funny if he slipped during that press conference and said, "Well, you think I'm a jerk now, but wait till you see what we get in the lottery."
I think that's why he's been keeping his mouth shut. He's like, if only you knew what I knew.
He's
But
just too lucky, man. Too lucky.
yeah, I think it's well. Regardless, I don't. This draft lottery system is not working. I mean, the Mavs, they were a playoff team, a play-in team, whatever. You shouldn't get a chance in the play. You shouldn't be one game away from making the playoffs and then also have a chance of winning the lottery.
But didn't they also put in this position who picks right behind who was supposed to pick right behind them? It was the Hawks. The Hawks.
I think so.
Well, wait till you hear this. Dallas and the Hawks had a coin flip because they were actually tied.
Oh, it was the
Dallas.
Bulls.
Oh, the Bulls.
It was the
right.
Bulls. The Bulls lost.
So they lost the coin flip. So Chicago should have had.
They didn't even lose the coin flip. The reason that the Bulls couldn't get to a coin flip was because Josh Giddey hit that half-court game winner in the regular season.
I heard about this. Yeah,
which it knocked out their need for the tiebreaker.
Oh.
So
I
literally, if
lost the
Giddey
coin
hadn't
flip.
hit that meaningless, stupid half-court shot, the Bulls would have
Again, another example why your coach should say, "Hey, make sure you lose this game," because it could be important.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
more than
lose this
ever,
game.
teams are now thinking, if they actually believe the system is not rigged, they're thinking, well, hell, Dallas, got the number one pick. Why can't we get the number one pick next year?
Well, I just think
but
this
like
is
you
the
said, if
way-
it was a flat system, nobody would be
no
that.
need to lose.
Nobody would, right. Nobody would be that enthusiastic because they'd have,
Well, I just feel like what? Like a team like the Jazz 2 seasons ago with basically the same roster, they could have made the play-in game and or the playoffs. This year, they were the worst team in the league by choice. They're not that bad. But to me, it's like I want to see competitive basketball. I don't think that losing creates that, even though all of these teams seem to want to build around a lottery ball.
Right.
Off the 15-18% chance that we get Cooper Flag.
The Sixers have become the prime example of that. I mean, during the process, they gave away Drew Holiday. They gave away Vukovic. You know, they
Andre
had all
Iguodala.
these, huh?
Andre Iguodala.
Right. They just gave these guys away who went on to be great players.
Yep.
And the only people they kept were Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. And how's that worked out?
Not well.
They were just lucky
Not
with
well.
Maxey. They were, yeah. I don't believe in tanking, and I don't believe, it's got to go. All right, we got to move on. We got picks of the week. We only have 2 series. You guys probably have the advantage of knowing what's going on with the Knicks and in Indiana. I don't want to know. I want to watch it right after the show. But I just want to tell people out there, listeners, we have been kicking butt, really, with our picks of the week against the spread or with the odds. Sammy, for the first round of the playoffs, won $75.50. I won 122, but then I lost 19 in the next round. Joey won close to 100 in the first round of the playoffs and only lost 34 in the second round. So Joey's almost even now. And Cam lost 50. But Cam's new to the process. It was only the second round of the playoffs, and he has a chance to redeem himself here. But my point is, we have Josh at plus 170. We have Drew at plus 138. We have Sammy at plus 76. Me at plus 74. If you would have listened to us, you would have made some money, folks. And the one thing I've noticed throughout the process is we have particularly benefited from taking underdogs. And because most of these picks have been with the odds. So, again, today they are with the odds. So, well done, guys. So what we have, if we have the Eastern Conference Finals, and even though I hope you guys don't know the result, don't tell me, but we're going to pick it as if the series didn't start, because I don't even know if the game's over at this point. But obviously, Minnesota lost last night in a big way to OKC, and so now we're taking the odds with the new odds. It was around. You could get Minnesota at about plus 300 and OKC at about minus 250. Are you ready now? The odds are minus 750 for OKC and plus 530 for Minnesota. So that's where we're at. With the Knicks, as I said, at least me, I'm picking this without knowing the what's going on in game one. The Knicks are started at minus 150 in Indiana plus 125. And I tell you, I've been going back and forth on this. So actually, I'm going to listen to your guys' arguments, and maybe you can give me some insight to something I'm not thinking about here. Go ahead, Joey.
Yeah. So we're doing Knicks Pacers first?
Yep.
Yeah. I have the Pacers here. Going back to last year, I could not have been any less of a believer. I said they don't have a legitimate star. Halliburton is not the number one guy. This is just a team of so-so players. They're going to get crunched. And then they made a deep run. And I thought, okay, that might have been a fluke. And then I watched them this year. I'm like, all right, now I understand it. They're like the 2015 Hawks on steroids. Like they don't have a superstar, but they just have a bunch of guys that can just ball. I mean, they have so many wings that can get you a bucket, that can defend. They have guards that can create shots. And then like Halliburton and Siakam, they know when to turn it up when they need to. Halliburton especially. I mean, he's a phenomenal facilitator, I think even more than the stats show. And then when he needs to, as we saw in the Cleveland series, when he needs to, he can turn it up. No doubt about it. Siakam has been a fantastic addition. Miles Turner has been playing solid. And I mean, outside of, I guess, OKC, no team has more depth than the Pacers. I mean, just they can throw 11 guys at you and not a single liability on the court. The Knicks are a great team, don't get me wrong. But I think they lack that depth, and it's gonna be a battle. Both teams are pure hustle, pure defense. it's going to be a grind. I think it's going to be the best series of the playoffs. Maybe one of the best. I think it could be the best series, or one of the best series in recent memory. I think it's going to be fantastic. But I think Indiana, they've got the depth. They made the run last year. I think they can do it again. They have the Knicks number. So yeah, I'm rocking with the Pacers here, and also good odds.
Yeah. So you're putting 10 on
Actually, yeah. We'll just do 10. I don't want to lose it all.
all right. Well, you got to get over the mark here.
That's true.
So Cam, what are you thinking for the Eastern Conference Finals? Do you want the slight favorite Knicks or the slight underdog Indiana?
You're going to see a pretty common theme with my selections for this round. I'm going to go with the team that gets the best whistle, and I'm going to select the Knicks in 5 over the Pacers.
Wow.
I'm going to put 50 on it.
I'm trying to unstrike through here. There we go. So you have Scott Foster Knicks for 50. I'll tell you what. I'm thinking very much. Well, we have all these conspiracy theories here. Personally, I this is tough. New York clearly has the better starting 5, in my mind. But as Joey said, Indiana can go 11 deep. And what if, as we've seen in many of these series, somebody on New York gets hurt, a Brunson or a Hart.
Hart Bridges Anunoby goes down. I think it's over for the Knicks.
Right. And but now that's the one argument for Indiana. But you're kind of counting on somebody getting hurt. So that's a weird way to bet. Here's the other thing working against Indiana. So far, these injuries have worked all in their favor. Are they as good as we think they are? I thought the Knicks would be here. At this point in time, it's preseason, and they are. The only missing piece is Boston. I thought they'd be playing Boston here. So again, injuries worked in the Knicks' favor too. I'm going to go with
realistically, beyond my joke pick, I do think this is a complete toss-up series, and I would be kind of shocked if it doesn't go 7.
Yeah.
Right. On that note, I think I'm going to go with Indiana. Just because I'm getting a little odds, it's plus 125. I'm not going to go big here. I'm going to just go. It's the conference finals. I'll put 20 on it. On Indiana. I think it is a 7-game series. And the question is, does Indiana's depth, pay dividends here? We've seen lack of depth cause big problems. Does that happen in this series? So let's move on to the Western Conference. I'll go back to you, Joey. Now that OKC is up 1 game, they're huge favorites. They went from big favorites to huge favorites. But the question is, home team wins game 1. Minnesota could come back and actually turn the advantage in their favor. Can you imagine the odds if Minnesota wins game 2? It'd probably be, maybe close to what the Knicks in Indiana series is. So what are you thinking here?
Yeah, I got Minnesota here for really 2 reasons: for money and for spite. I'm still furious at the Thunder. I'm still furious at Shea, at Caruso, at the refs, at all of that. So yeah, I'm going Minnesota here. I'm going Minnesota here. The thing is, I believe in the Minnesota home crowd. They went down 0-1 at OKC. That's to be expected. I fully believe Minnesota can grab both games at home. Even if they lose this next game, I fully believe they can get both at home. Anthony Edwards is a phenomenal player. They've got depth. They've got a fantastic front court. They've got defense. I think that they can match OKC's physicality if the whistles are going both ways, which I think after a game or two of public outcry, I think could happen. Um, I I just I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a very close series, and I just trust Ant with the ball in his hands more so, really more so than Shea. As crazy as it sounds, I think Ant, he has more experience. He has that dog in him, for lack of better expression. There are better ways to have said that, but regardless, I trust him with the ball in his hands at plus 750. I think it's good odds. Julius Randle's playing out of his mind, and everyone's talking about OKC as if they're this amazing, unbeatable team, and they're a fantastic team. Don't get me wrong, but the Denver series showed they're human, and even the Memphis series, there were several games that they probably should have lost.
Yeah, I agree. I think what's really worked in their favor is their depth has really worked in their favor.
Right. But I think Minnesota doesn't quite have OKC's depth, but they have probably more depth than Denver. And I think that this OKC team is mortal, and I think Minnesota's got enough firepower to maybe take it in 7.
Right. Cam, I see you have Scott Foster parentheses 50 on OKC.
Like I said, you're going to see a common theme with my picks. I'm going to take the only undefeated, figure in the NBA. I'm going to take Scott Foster again in 5.
Oh, wait, real quick, fun fact for you guys: Scott Foster's son was my brother's college roommate. So and my brother doesn't really follow basketball, but anytime some shenanigans with Scott Foster comes up, I always text my brother. I'm like, look, you got to talk to your college roommate and tell his dad to lock in.
Here you go. Here's my reasoning. In the 2 games that Scott Foster was a referee in the OKC Denver series, both of those games, the Thunder won by 40 points.
Whoa.
In both of those games.
And Minnesota had 8 fouls last night in the first 3 minutes.
Thank you. Jaden McDaniels was out of the game basically from the first 5 minutes on. There's a clear different whistle for OKC. I'm going to stand by it. I'm not conspiracy theorying here. You can look at the numbers. People made a lot about Denver getting a plus 10 free throw margin in that series. It should have been plus 40. The way that Shea specifically is refereed.
Oh my God! Last night,
compared to every other star in the league.
Did you see last night when he hit McDaniels in the face when McDaniels was just trying to move around, and then later, after he hit McDaniels' face, then McDaniels connected with him, and he got the flagrant foul.
Yeah, I gave up on.
SGA is the one who made the first contact to the head.
I gave up on the Nuggets game 7 after they called the flagrant on Gordon.
Oh yeah,
where Shea was wrapping Aaron Gordon.
That's the play I'm thinking about. I have mixed up.
Or how about just when they put Caruso on Jokic, and Caruso was just bear hugging him the whole time, but he gets away with it because he's small and it's physical defense.
In the regular season, the OKC Thunder foul more than any other team, and it's by a huge margin. In the playoffs, that has not been represented in the same way. It's literally the reverse version of James Harden in the regular season collecting foul calls versus James Harden in the playoffs.
Wow.
James Harden in the playoffs does not go to the line in the same way that he does in the regular season.
Right.
Regular season, he goes maybe 12 times. All right. We're seeing the reverse of that, where now this team that fouls incessantly is getting rewarded for the lack of whistles, but they're still getting the benefit of a favorable whistle on the other end.
Right.
And to me, taking that team every time and putting all my eggs in that basket.
Wow. Well, somebody should speak up about that other than us. I mean, that's the obligation of people who are running Denver, who we're not sure who that is, and we're not sure they're competent, but also Minnesota, or anybody else in the Western Conference who's gone down to them or whatever. Another problem with the league. All right.
And real quick, the other thing I wanted to add is if the NBA is going to start making a push towards more physical defense and less foul calling, I'm all for it. That's fine.
Me too.
You can't change it in the middle of a game 7 of a series for one team. That's not how that works.
Right. Exactly. It was funny when I was going through the stats of the G League Elite Camp in the NBA Combine. In the G League Elite Camp, and I assume there were different referees used, then I assume it was G League referees. And then in the, I don't know who was doing the NBA Combine, but it was amazing. Like a lot of guys had 4, 5, at least 2 or 3 fouls. And then when you got to the NBA Combine, like guys had 2, 1 foul, no fouls. Like I'd say the average player in the NBA Combine had 1 or 2 fouls, and the average player in the G League Elite Camp had 2 or 3. That's a significant number. So I'm just saying, refereeing can be very different from, depending on who you're using. All right, so my pick on the Minnesota OKC series, I think OKC, I have to think, mathematically, all the odds are in their favors. But in terms of betting, even when it was plus 300 for Minnesota, I was liking that because I thought Minnesota has a chance. And as I said, if they win game 2 or even just game 3, now, of course, if they win game 3, they also have to win game 4. And they would be at home. But I think, just one win tomorrow night, even if it's a 1-point win, all of a sudden the series is like an even series at that point because Minnesota would, turn the page on them. The other thing to think about is last night's blowout really didn't occur until like the last few minutes of the game. The game at halftime, I don't even know who led at halftime. It was close. Then all of a sudden, OKC stretched it out to like somewhere between 8 and 11 points. And it hung around that 8 and 11 point mark for about halfway through the fourth quarter. And in the fourth quarter, Minnesota just seemed to give up. And OKC ended up walking away. So I still think Minnesota has a chance. I don't think tomorrow is necessarily critical, but it certainly would make their lives much easier to win that game. But then I think game 3 and 4, they need to sweep. All right. So that wraps up our NBA show this week. So fans, you got rewarded with 2 shows. Obviously, we didn't have a special guest for this particular episode, but as always, I want to thank all of our listeners. And if you ever miss an episode, you can get caught up at hoopsprospects.com. We'll be back next week to talk more NBA playoffs, more NBA draft, and more college stuff. So, gentlemen, before we go, any final thoughts? NBA, college, or just Scott Foster-like, or other conspiracy theories we have?
No, I think we got enough in for tonight.
Yeah, we did. And I don't
some.
consider myself a conspiracy guy, but man, some of the stuff that goes on in the NBA does really stink.
I'm a man of facts, Rich.
Huh?
I'm a man of facts.
I'm a man of logic and probability, and the probability of Dallas getting that number 1 pick was so small, and they did. And it just seemed, wow, that answers all the NBA's problems right there. Joey, any final thoughts?
Nope. I'll make sure to bring some more conspiracy theories for next time, though.
Nice. Good man.
All right, guys. We'll see everyone next week.